Alright, so welcome to this week's Friday video, and first off I'd like to apologize because it's Saturday morning. I guess I just got kind of held up in some things last night and yesterday afternoon-ish time, and didn't have time, and now I'm recording on Saturday morning, but it's still coming out this week, so I guess we'll just jump in and it'll be a Saturday video instead of a Friday video. So here's your Saturday ramble/rant. I figured what would be kind of cool to do this ramble/rant on is just some online quizzes. So I have two pulled up, the I Side With quiz and the Specker quiz. I've used both before, but it's been quite a while since I've done them. And so that'll be kind of fun to jump in on them again. And this also gives you an idea of where I stand on a couple of these things. And, well, you'll know a little bit more about me as we go through here. And since this is kind of the topic most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time for the Friday videos, it will give you an idea of where I stand on a couple of these things. And then it's a great idea for you to try out these quizzes too. So I figured let's go ahead and jump in with the I Side With quiz. So let's go ahead and run through. Now what's cool about this quiz, so let's see. Should the federal government require people to wear face masks in public during the COVID pandemic? It lets you learn more about the issue. You can see at the bottom left, it's going to, it doesn't pop up for you. Okay. Let's go. Let's control click on that, see where it brings us. Okay, right here. And this actually pulls from one of their sources. And you can't see, but when I clicked on it, there was a little hover up that popped up. It's not appearing when I record in OBS. It said it was pulling it from Wikipedia, so that's where it's pulling this information from. And you can find out more information on that. You can also click on the stats, which pulls a new window, and it lets you know what other people are saying. And I don't know if it tells you, so it tells you a little more details. It doesn't tell you what the spread is though, like what type of people there are. And then you can also click, you can click on the news, and that will bring you to a Google search of the news with this topic. And it'll even let you click on other stances. So, yes, no, yes, but only indoors or crowded areas, yes, except for certain medical conditions, no, we should let the virus naturally run its course, no, the government should recommend it, but not require it, add your own stance, and you can even do this question is no longer relevant and should be removed. I assume this would be, someone can click this after like the pandemic is over. So for me, I'd say it's a mixture of these two. No, we should let the virus naturally run its course, and no, the government should recommend it, but not require it. I'm going to go with this one. And then, how important is this to you? Least, less, somewhat, more, most. I'm going to click on more because to me this is an infringement on people's liberties and freedoms to force them to wear something, no matter how much it helps. Whether you think it helps or not, and I think it does help, which is why I chose the should recommend it but not require it. I think it's an infringement on people's freedoms to force them to wear something. Do you support the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act? And again, same types of things. I'll click other stances and see. See all these here. I'm not going to read all of them because we have several questions to go through. And I click no, the government should not be involved in healthcare. And I'm going to click more on that. Okay. Should the federal government increase funding of healthcare for low-income individuals? Okay, let's see. I would click this one because I don't like the idea of government and healthcare at all. All right, let's look more healthcare questions. And it's going to give us a few more, and I'll click more there. Do you support single-payer healthcare system? I always like to click other stances so I can get a little bit more information. And there we go, right there. Should the government fund the World Health Organization? No, it has shown to be ineffective. Most. Should people be required to work in order to receive Medicaid? Other stances. I think if we do have Medicaid, then yes. If we don't have Medicaid, then obviously no, but that's covered in the last question. Who are employed, are healthy. Well, I like both of these options, but we're going to kind of split the difference. Just click normal. Yes. More. All right, show more healthcare questions. Should the government regulate the prices of life-saving drugs? Let's see. So no, and the government should never regulate the price of private businesses, but I don't think that's... I think the best option right here is but shorten the lifespan of drug patents. I think that's the best option, because that kind of covers the moral issue dilemma here of the government regulating prices of private businesses, but it also prevents the prices from staying high, because then competition can come in when the patents, expire. Now I'm just going to leave it at somewhat. Should cities open drug safe havens where people who are addicted to illegal drugs can use them under the supervision of medical professionals? Not really a fan. I'm going to click this, which sounds weird, but I can go into more detail later. I think there's a really interesting way to go. I don't think legalizing, not necessarily, but more of decriminalizing and tying in some child abuse laws. For example, if you use drugs and you are a parent of a minor that lives in your household, that should be considered child abuse. If you're using these drugs or being under the influence of them around children, that should be child abuse. They should be treated like alcohol, that you should not be able to operate motor vehicles while under the influence of them. So make it so that way, if someone's using it, they can't harm others, or it is illegal for them to be an influence on others while using them. But if they just want to harm themselves, because I don't like the idea of drugs because of the damages they can do to your bodies, I would never use them. But if someone else wants to harm themselves while doing it, I'd say as long as he's not harming someone else. So that's why I want to explain myself on that one, because it's not necessarily legal. This is the closest to my choice. My choice would be decriminalize the use of them, but criminalize the influence you have on others while using them, if that makes sense. Should there be more or less privatization of veterans' healthcare? More. Veterans should be able to see any doctor of their choice. Let's start with that. More, and replace the VA healthcare system with a personal health savings account. Oh, I like that one. Okay. All right. Show more health. How many healthcare questions are there? Okay. Should the federal government be allowed to negotiate drug prices for Medicare? I'd say no, the government should not interfere with the free market. That goes back to the getting rid of Medicare. And just having the private companies take care of everything. Should health insurers be allowed to deny coverage to individuals who have pre-existing condition? Okay. So, should they be able to deny coverage? I don't know. I'd say the government should not be involved in health insurance, but then also it's kind of an interesting issue where I would say they should not be allowed to deny coverage, but they should be able to charge more, just like with any other insurance company. Like, for example, your house insurance. If you have a trampoline or a swimming pool, your insurance price goes up. I think it's the same way because there's a higher risk of you're going to have to pull from that insurance. So if you have a pre-existing condition, there's a higher risk that you're going to have to pull from that service. So it makes sense for them to charge you more. So just like if you have a history of accidents, your car insurance is going to cost more because you're more likely to have to pull from that. So I'm going to click add your own stance, and I'm going to say yes and no, comma. They should, sorry about my clacking, they should be able to charge more for is it hyphenated? Yeah, pre-existing conditions, but not deny coverage. I think that sounds fair. All right. Should the government increase funding for mental health research and treatment? Other stances. Here you go, right here. No, incentivize private companies to address the issue instead. That perfectly sums up what I would have written if I were to do my own stance. All right, more questions. Okay, last one. Do you support the legalization of marijuana? Let's see. Add your own stance. I'm pretty much going to put what I was saying before. Yes, but make it illegal to use in public or around children. That would be my option. And finally, past healthcare issues. Foreign policy issues. Should the government increase or decrease military spending? Neither. Just keep it how it is. Let's see. Should the U.S. accept refugees from Syria? I feel like this question is no longer relevant. It should be removed because that was quite a while ago. Should foreign terrorism suspects be given constitutional rights? So this is an interesting topic because then it goes to the whole idea of these rights are not given by the government, but they're given by your creator, by God, and the government can't take them away from you. So let's see. They're not U.S. citizens and do not. Well, I'd say everybody has the constitutional rights, and our Constitution just protects them. I'd say this one. Give them a fair trial. More foreign policy questions. Should the military be allowed to use enhanced interrogation techniques such as waterboarding to gain information from suspected terrorists? Let's see. Okay, I would say right here, yes, but only if they are convicted terrorists. That goes back to the other question. They would be given a fair trial, and if they are proven guilty as a terrorist or convicted as a terrorist, then yes, sure, you can do those things. Because then I'd say that for while you're serving your sentence, you lose your rights. And then they could be reinstated later on as you return back to society and no longer are a criminal. But in this sense, if you're truly a terrorist, then at that point, I think, well, we can get to death penalty stuff later. But did the U.S. remain in the United Nations? No. Let's see what you have here. No, and remove the UN headquarters from the U.S. There we go. Perfect. Most. I hate the UN. Should every 18-year-old citizen be required to provide at least 1 year of military service? No. Service should be a choice instead of an obligation. There we go. Should the U.S. continue to support Israel? Let's see. Yes, but respect Israel's sovereignty. There we go, right there. Yes. But do not dictate how it should interact with its neighbors. Let it make its own decisions. It's a sovereign state. But yes, still, they're an ally, so. Do you support the killing of Iranian Major General Qasem Soleimani? We should not start a war with Iran. Iran has support ISIS. Yes. That would go with this one. Do you support President Obama's move to lift the trade and travel embargo with Cuba? Oh, hit the wrong button. I apologize. Other stances. No, lift the travel embargo would not allow trade until... I'm not sure on this issue. I don't really have a strong opinion on this because I don't know enough about it. And clicking learn more, I don't think this is going to help much. Yeah, that doesn't help me much. Since it's from 2014 and it's kind of an older issue, I am going to just click it's no longer relevant. But I'm not well versed in the issue, so I don't have much of an opinion, so I'm just going to click even least right there. Should the U.S. increase or decrease foreign aid spending? Okay, I like this one. I think it should be we cut all aid, and then all the countries have to reapply and give good reasoning. And if an ally has a really good reasoning that can be beneficial to them and us, then at that point we can say, all right, we can start talking. Should the U.S. remain in NATO? This is no longer relevant. Should the military fly drones over foreign countries to gain intelligence and kill suspected terrorists? There we go. I'd go with that one. All right, moving on. Should Jerusalem... Okay, this is no longer relevant because it is the capital of Israel, and we have moved... Well, okay, no, we've moved our embassy there. We've already done that, so yeah. But yes, it should be recognized as the capital of Israel. Should the United States pull all military troops from Afghanistan? Well, there's not a lot there. I would say we should have some small presence, but take most out, yes. So I'm going to go with yes, even though it's siding more towards kind of, but that's the closest. So I'll put less because it's not a straightforward answer. And I'm kind of tired of typing, so I don't want to add my own stance right now. Should the U.S. defend other NATO countries that maintain low military defense budgets relative to their GDP? No, we should withdraw from NATO. That's kind of not, not really relevant anymore. But more questions. Okay. Should the U.S. continue NSA surveillance of its allies? Allies, ourselves, I don't like the idea of them spying on us, but of other countries. I don't really care, so I'm just gonna go with yes, since I don't care, and set it to least. Should the government cancel production of the F-35 fighter? Let's learn more about that. Stealth fighter jet being produced in the U.S. military by Lockheed Martin Corporation. 3 variations. They retire from service in 2070. Development and construction of F-35 will be the most expensive. Okay, so it's because it's expensive, but they will last until 2070, it says. Opponents argue that the fighter is necessary for the U.S. military to maintain its edge over foreign adversaries. Okay, let's add our... Oh, wrong button. That's not what I meant to do. I would say it seems... So that is... It's very expensive, exceed $1.5 trillion, but if it's truly going to last until 2070, then that kind of evens out. So I would go with yes, but less. Should the U.S. Should the U.S. sell military weapons to India in order to counter Chinese and Russian influence? That's kind of a iffy one, because yes, selling military weapons to foreign countries will help boost the economy. True. No, we should increase diplomatic efforts to resolve conflicts peacefully. Also true. But it's how do you kind of balance the two? So I'm going to go with this one, but least. Should the U.S. go to war with Iran? No, the U.S. should encourage Iran to disarm through... Start with that, and then missile strikes if necessary is what I would say. So I'm going to put less. But that's kind of where to start, and then you kind of go towards the other stuff if that doesn't work. Because a lot of these things are more complicated than just yes or no. Should the government attempt to influence foreign elections? I would go with that one. No, let them do what they want to do. They're their own sovereign country. If they want to screw with themselves, sure. If they want to make themselves better, sure. So, yeah. Should it be illegal to join a boycott of Israel? No, it's a violation of free speech. I like Israel a lot, but it's a big issue to violate free speech. Should the U.S. conduct military strikes against North Korea in order to destroy the long-range missile and nuclear? Okay. So, I think that it would be too dangerous to our allies around there, such as South Korea and Japan and such, to go through on that with collateral damage and such. China addressing the issue is not going to do anything. They'll do nothing. We cannot risk the launch of a nuclear... Kind of true, but we can also... I feel that we can stop it. So I would say, yes, right there. It doesn't say we should use every diplomatic option. No, it says we should use every diplomatic option first. I'll go with that one. All right, moving on to the domestic policy. Should there be more restrictions on the current process to purchasing a gun? No, and the government should pass a national stand your ground law. Most. There we go. Should teachers be allowed to carry guns at school? Yes. Right there. Should be required. for at least one teacher or security guard to be armed. And this is if public schools stay as a thing. Most. Should victims of gun violence be allowed to sue firearms dealers for manufacturers? No, that's stupid. No, manufacturers and dealers should only be held liable for negligence. I'm just going to go with no, because it should only be if, for example, there's an issue with the firearm. To me, I don't know what they mean by negligence, but for me, negligence would be more of someone being not holding the firearm right, and that's their own fault for not holding it correctly. Moving on. Should the President of the United States have the power to deploy military troops in order to stop protests? So that's kind of a loaded question, because protests, no. Riots, yes. And I feel like that's kind of what they're leaning towards. Let's see if we click learn more. Okay, it's talking about the insurrection action stuff. So it's talking about in the June event, but those are not protests, those were riots. So if that's what they're referring to, the riots, I'd say no, you let protests do what they're going to do, but once they become riots, then yes. Right there, that one. Are you in favor of decriminalizing drug use? Let's see if it has what I said before. So we're going to add in that own stance. Let's see if we can scroll back up to the one before and just copy and paste. There's a lot of scrolling. Okay. Oh, I must have passed it. We're going to kind of go quickly, but also slowly as I scroll to find it. Okay, no, that's not it. Should be around here somewhere. Okay, right there. There we go. Copy. And go back down. And paste. There we go. Are you in favor of decriminalizing? Yes, but make it illegal to use in public and or around children. Do you support affirmative action programs? No. Let's see. No, and minority groups should not receive any favorable treatment. Perfect. Nobody should get favorable treatment. Treat everybody exactly the same. Do you support the Patriot Act? Not really. No, and I pass strict laws prohibiting government surveillance without probable cause and a warrant. Perfect. Should it be illegal to burn the American flag? No, it's a violation of free speech. Yes. No, I don't respect anyone who does, but they should. There we go. That's a really good option right there. I think just like anything, it should be illegal to burn it in a public place where it can harm others. But if you want to do it on your own private property, I don't like the idea of it. Or I don't like what you're trying to do, but I respect your right to do so. Just as this question says, or this answer states right here. Should the Supreme Court be reformed to include more seats and term limits on judges? So that one right there should not be politicized. It should just be. It should really just be that the whole reason that there's no term limit is because the whole idea of you shouldn't be trying to politicize things to run for like another term, or hey, I'm trying to do this certain thing while on the Supreme Court, so that way when my term ends, I could run for office based on what I did in the Supreme Court. So that was the whole reason that there is no term limit for Supreme Court. It's just that you retire when you're done or you die. And most of them, they die. So that was the whole reason for the idea of term limits in Supreme Court, that they serve a life sentence so that way it does not become politicized. Because again, if you are going to, have your term end and then you're probably going to run for another office, you could use what you did in the Supreme Court to help you run for office. And so they want to prevent that. So that's why that is like that. And no, not more seats. I really think like even 5 or 7 would be fine. But we're at 9, so we'll keep it at 9. I'll click more on that. All right. Should people on the no-fly list be banned from purchasing guns and ammunition? No, it's unconstitutional to deny someone's rights without due process. Also the second one, but definitely that one is probably the most straightforward. Should the U.S. government grant immunity to Edward Snowden? probably this one. Or this one, because standing trial, he might be, said that he's free to go. I don't know. I'll kind of go with this one and put it at less. Should the government be allowed to seize private property with reasonable compensation for public or civic use? No, the government should never be allowed to seize private property. That seems pretty straightforward. Show more. Should social media companies ban political advertising? No. Should the military upgrade, and that's not even a governmental issue, that's up to the social media companies. So, should the government upgrade Air Force One? I don't know much about the current fleet, if it's sufficient enough or not. I think that is one thing where it's worth spending money, that we always need to be ahead of the modern technology because it's a big protection thing. But I think it's fair to say that they need to, negotiate a price. I'll put less. Should internet service providers be allowed to speed up access and popular websites that pay higher rates, and at the expense of slowing down access to less popular websites that pay lower rates? Well, that's a private company. They should be able to do what they want. Let's see. So I agree with what they should do, which is treat all traffic equally, but they should be allowed to. So as a private business, yes, they should be allowed to do what they want as long as there is competition. But what they should do, in my opinion, is yes, this one, treat all traffic equally, but what should they be allowed to do? They should be allowed to, yes, but I'll put least because I don't think they should, but they should be allowed to. Should local police increase surveillance and patrol of Muslim neighborhoods? Right here. No, the decision should be based on crime rates instead of race or religion. Yeah. Or even the one under it is fine too. Police should increase surveillance and patrol of all high crime neighborhoods. That's exactly the same as the question above, or the answer above it, just worded differently. Should there be term limits set for members of Congress? I would say yes. For the House, but not the Senate. I don't know about that. Yes, and decrease their salary or retirement benefits. Yes, term limits will increase performance and prevent corruption. No, we already have term limits that are called elections. That's a valid argument, but no, officials gains valuable experience. Also a valid argument. I'm going to go with this one, and we could decide what the term limits would be, but to make sure that it also, kind of goes in line with this one, gaining experience and becoming more effective over time, which I think it's a good idea to start in the House and move up to the Senate. Should the NSA, National Security Agency, be allowed to collect basic metadata of citizens' phone calls, such as numbers, timestamps, and call durations? No. And abolished it. I don't know, because the NSA, if we're spying on people outside the U.S., maybe, only with a warrant showing probable cause of criminal activity. That sounds like a good option right there. All right, more domestic policy questions. Should the government pass laws which protect whistleblowers? Probably this one. That one sounds good, but I'll put less because not super well versed in the issue. Should the redrawing of congressional districts be controlled by an independent, nonpartisan commission? Let's see. Probably this one. That sounds like probably the best option. Should the government regulate social media sites as a means to prevent fake news and misinformation? Let's see. This one. But really, there needs to be a whole idea of platform versus publisher, which I've talked about in last week's video a little bit. All right, and last question in this area, should the government raise the retirement age for Social Security? Yes, but I would prefer to privatize instead. Perfect answer. I guess I'll read the others just in case, but no limit to income gap. People now living. So yes, this one I would agree with. They're now living longer than when the program was created, but I would prefer a private, for it to be private instead. I really don't like that it's mandatory. Okay. Criminal issues. Should funding for local police departments be redirected to social and community-based programs? I'd say no. No. Increased funding and training. There we go, right there. Perfect. Should convicted criminals have the right to vote? Let's see. Right there. Yes, but only after completing their sentences and parole/probation. That would be my choice right there, which I actually talked about a little bit earlier this video. Do you support mandatory minimum prison sentences for people charged with drug possession? No, and I kind of talked about this earlier, what it should be. Like, sure, make a mandatory minimum prison sentence for somebody who is, doing it around children or in public and causing harm to others, but I already talked about what I think should be done with that situation. Should prisons ban the use of solitary confinement for juveniles? I would say for violent criminals that are a danger to themselves and other inmates, that's what it should be used for. Should nonviolent prisoners be released from jail in order to reduce overcrowding? I would say 1, 2, 3. One of those three. So I'm going to choose one. Let's go with that one, and let's put least since I'm kind of stuck between three options. Should police officers be required to wear body cameras? So I'm between these two because it should be your choice, but at that point you're an employee of the government, and that's what you're working as a government official at that point. So do you have the choice anymore versus this one? But it's also, what you're doing, so maybe it is your choice. Versus this one where it does protect both. So I'm going to go with this one, but then go to less because I kind of like both options. Should the government hire private companies to run prisons? I feel like a mix between these two, so I feel like the best option would be this one and go with less. Should drug traffickers receive the death penalty? Probably this one. I think that's a good option. All right, environmental issues. Should the government increase environmental regulate? No. I think don't interfere with the free market. So you could say anything about any of these, but I say no, don't increase taxes. Is it a natural occurrence? I think mostly yes, but I do think that some human interaction can affect it a bit. But in the negative way, it's harder to go back the positive way. Provide more incentives. That's again messing with the free market. Provide more incentives, again messing with the free market. So no, just do nothing. Maybe, kind of promote the idea of it, not financially, just, with, hey, this is what you should do. But should we withdraw from yes, we should, but that's kind of no longer relevant. But really, it was this one right here. This was the reason I said yes at the time before it even happened, until other countries are held to the same standards. If we're going to be a part of some type of foreign agreement, everybody needs to be held to the same standards. Should disposable products, such as all that stuff, that contain less than 50% biodegradable be banned? No. Let's see. Yeah, just no. Again, you could say, hey, you guys should do this and should use this, but no, you shouldn't ban the things. Let's see. Should the U.S. expand offshore drilling? There you go. Perfect right there. Yes. Deregulate the energy sector and let the free market determine the best energy sources. Okay. Should the government stop construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline? So I agree with this option, but it's kind of no longer relevant, but I think both of these options are good. But we're going to go with no longer relevant because it's kind of no longer relevant. Do you support the use of hydraulic fracking to extract oil and natural gas resources? Yes. I'd say probably this option, but less because I'm not super well versed in the issue. Should researchers be allowed to use animals in testing for the safety of drugs, vaccines, medical devices, and cosmetics? I'll go with yes, but less, because I'd rather them use animals and find issues than not do any testing or use humans, Should drilling be allowed in the Alaska Wildlife Refuge? Kind of this one, and yes, kind of a flip-flop between the two, so I'll go with this one, and I'll put least. Should the government give tax credits and subsidies to wind power industries? No. And all tax credits. Should cities be allowed to offer private companies economic incentives to relocate? There's a lot of options. Should cities be allowed to offer private companies economic incentives to relocate? Let's see. Oh, it's the whole Amazon thing of trying to, pay them to come create jobs. I'd say that one, but I also kind of don't like. Kind of going with that one right there. Government should never subsidize private businesses. Kind of the most straightforward, best answer. Should the U.S. raise taxes on the rich? Let's look. No, but lower taxes. Or no, but keep the current. Lower the income tax rate and remove all existing tax loopholes for large corporations. Abolish the income tax. Disallow all deductions and increases. There you go. Perfect. That's exactly what I want. Abolish the income tax and create nationwide sales tax. Because at that point, you're not having your money stolen and it's your choice. Everybody is now paying tax because everybody has to buy things. And so no one is avoiding it unless you want to be completely self-sufficient and, live off of your own land at that point, So most, yes, right there, abolish an income tax. Should the government raise the federal minimum wage? Let's see. I go with that option. I also kind of like the idea of eliminating all wage standards and allowing competition between companies, but there's not set data on how that would go. I just don't like the idea of them controlling the company, how much they have to pay. But this is probably the best option right now. Minimum wage jobs are meant to develop experience, not support a family. That's true. Should the U.S. raise or lower tax rate for corporations? Let's see. Remove taxes on corporations and tax shareholder dividends instead. I'll just go with lower. I think that's the best option available from there. Do you support a universal basic income program? No. Perfect right there. We'll encourage people not to work and harm economic growth. Should welfare recipients be tested for drugs? That seems reasonable. Yes, provide treatment for those people testing positive. Yes, and immediately terminate benefits for anyone testing positive. Seems like a good one. Yes, test anyone receiving money from the government, including employees and politicians. Better option. Regardless, we should end all social welfare. Okay, best option. So these two right here, because this one adds to it. Yes, anybody taking money from the government, including employees and politicians, and all social welfare programs. Also a good option. Do you believe labor unions help or hurt the economy? That's my best option right now so far. Okay, I think that's the best option here. Moving on. Should employers be required to pay men and women the same salary for the same job? Yes, and business should be required to publish their salary ranges for each position. No, this is relevant because the gender wage gap is a myth. No, the current requirements for equal pay. I think that is sufficient. No, the government should never determine what a private business should pay its own employees. That's also true. No, there are too many other variables such as education. That's also true. So these three are the best options. We'll go with the top one and click less since we're stuck between three. Should there be fewer or more restrictions on current welfare benefits. More and deny benefits to immigrants. That's a good one. Well, no, not to immigrants, to illegal immigrants would be the best option. More current benefits should be capped. But increased benefits for the elderly and disabled. More reform the system so that it supplements rather than replaces a working income. That's a good one. Fewer, okay. I'll probably go with that one. Should the government make cuts to public spending in order to reduce the national debt? Yes, and eliminate federal agencies that are unconstitutional. Yes, but drastically reduce the benefits. Okay. Okay, that's probably the best option. Moving on. Where am I? Okay, here. Should the government increase the tax rate on profits earned from sales of stocks, bonds, and real estate? Probably that one right there is probably the best option. I think eliminate all taxes and introduce a sales tax, but out of these, that's the best option. But we kind of already talked about that earlier. Should businesses be required to provide paid leave for full-time employees during the birth of a child or sick family member? Let's see. No private businesses should decide the amount of competitive incentives they offer to employees instead of a government mandate. Perfect answer. And it should be stated, if you want to have the government intervention here, it should be that the government says it has to be stated in their contract if you're signing a contract. And that way you can decide, do I want to take this job or not? Here's the benefits. And then you can negotiate benefits to get a new contract. Great. Should the government require businesses to pay salaried employees making up to $46,000 a year time and a half for overtime hours? Now, when the government is currently overregulating private businesses. So I think if a business decides to, they can. Obviously, but again, back to the previous question, it should be in their contract. And it should be both sides agreeing. The worker and the employer, or the employee and the employer both have to agree to how things are going to be run before they start their job. If they don't like it, don't sign the contract, go work somewhere else. And if a business wants to have more employees, they would probably have something like that to make it so that way they're getting more employees because better benefits. Should the current estate tax be decreased? Yes, and we should eliminate it. Perfect. Yeah, I read that right. Okay. Should the government use economic stimulus to aid the country during times of recession? So, only when... So no, they should not interfere with the free market unless it's because it interfered with the free market. What do I mean by that? Only when... Oh, I forgot a letter. Only when the... I'm sorry, I don't know how to spell recession. Reset. Oh, that was stupid. That's really easy. Only when the recession is caused by government shutdown. So, for example, this whole COVID thing, I don't like the idea of these stimuli being sent out to people, but I guess it's kind of okay because the reason that we're getting this stimulus is because the government had to shut us down. So they forced us to stop making money, so that way they're giving that money back. That's the way I see it. So yeah, only when the recession is caused by government shutdown. If it's a normal recession that just happened because maybe of bad choices, that's one thing. But if it's, hey, we're stopping you guys from working, here's money to make up for it, that makes sense. Should the U.S. continue to participate in NAFTA? I don't think it's relevant anymore. That's already taken care of. Should the government break up Amazon, Facebook, and Google? Not a lot of options here. I'm going to go with yes and less because there's a lot more to that. Look at last week's video a little bit to see the issues with some of these companies, but there's way more issues than I talked about last week that lead into this, and maybe it's something we could talk about in the future. So I'm just going to go with yes, less, to not get into a bunch of it right now. Should pension plans for federal, state, and local government workers be transitioned to privately managed accounts? Yes. Okay. Should the U.S. increase tariffs on imported products from China? Yes, China should be punished for artificially manipulating the currency. I'm kind of in between this and that, so I'm going to go with yes, but least. Should the president offer tax breaks to individual companies to keep jobs in the U.S.? Not interfere with the free market, but drastically increase tax. That's kind of where I am, not interfere with the free market. Do you support the TPP? Let's learn more. To make it easier for American companies to sell their goods and services in Pacific Rim countries. The deal will benefit American service companies who will be able to open up operations in Asian and South American countries. Opponents argue that this bill will incentivize U.S. companies to move services and manufacturing jobs overseas. Proponents argue that it would make American companies more successful at selling their goods in the Pacific Rim countries. Okay. Kind of on this one and this one. Let's go with this and put less. Should U.S. citizens be allowed to save or invest their money in offshore bank accounts? I don't see why not, And I don't think, you shouldn't have to report your income, especially if we're not going to have an income tax, which I talked about several questions ago. More economic issues. Should pension payments be increased for retired government workers? This sounds like a good option. Should the government add or increase tariffs on products imported into the country? I think if we abolish income tax, yes, that's a good source of government income, sales tax and maybe tariffs, but I'm going to go with yes, least. Should the government subsidize farmers? Right there. And all subsidies. Should an in-state sales tax apply to online purchase of in-state buyers from out-of-state sellers? That's a heavy question. Should an in-state sales tax, so being in Florida, should a Florida sales tax apply to online purchases of in-state buyers from out-of-state sellers? So for example, let's say I'm in Florida and I am purchasing something from Louisiana. Should Florida sales tax be applied to it? Let's see. That one right there. That would be my option. Would you favor an increased sales tax in order to reduce property taxes? That seems the best one so far. Yep, I'd go with that one. Should the government acquire equity stakes in companies it bails out during a recession? I'm not sure what an equity stake is. Let's see. Oh boy, this is a lot. State-owned enterprise is a business enterprise where the government or state has significantly controlled through full, majority, or significant minority ownership. During the 2020 coronavirus outbreak, Larry Kudlow, the White House top economic advisor, said the Trump administration would consider asking for an equity stake in corporations that needed taxpayer aid. One of the ideas is if we provide assistance, we might take an equity position. Kudlow said Wednesday that okay, so this is from some. It said Wednesday, so they literally just pulled this from like an article. I think they should never own shares of private companies. That's probably the best option. I think we're almost through this. Should the government prevent... Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Should the government prevent mega mergers of corporations that could potentially control a large percentage? Yes. The government should break up existing mega corporations. Let's see. So, this one right here. No, the government should not interfere with free market. I think the breaking up of monopolies and mega mergers, mega corporations, is the one area where the only instance where the government can interfere with the market. That would be that. I've said that. I don't know if I said that before here, but I've said that many times in the past, that I think The only way the government should interfere in the market is to break up monopolies. And I forget the term. Is it oligopolies? Let's look that up. Oligopoly. Is that the word I'm looking for? Yes. Okay. So, yes, breaking up monopolies and oligopolies. That would be the only instance where I think that the government should interfere with the market. And the only. Should the IRS create a free electronic tax filing system? Hey, look at that. Perfect. Oh, good option. Should the Federal Reserve Bank be audited by Congress? Okay, that's a good one. That's also a good one. Okay. Should the government classify Bitcoin as a legal currency? Okay, I think that's the best option there. Should the government require children to be vaccinated? No. No, I don't like the idea of spending money on it either. No, we're just going to go with no. Do I think it's a good idea I think it's a good idea to not vaccinate your children? No, you should vaccinate your children, but it's your choice, not the government's choice. That is my opinion on it. Do you support the use of nuclear energy? Yes. I think this is a good option because most of this stuff right here is not very efficient, where we've seen that nuclear energy, when taken care of, is very efficient and very safe when taken care of. So it's good to have until these become more efficient. I think that's a good option right there. Should producers be required to label GMOs? I would go with probably that one, but less. I don't like the idea of banning them because look right here, GMOs are the most promising. I agree with that. So that would probably be, I guess, the best option. Okay, more science questions. Should the government fund space travel? This is a tough one for me because it's like no, but yes. I kind of like this answer and this one. So let's go with this one and put less since I'm stuck between the two. All right, national security issues. Oh boy, we do have quite a few more. Okay. National security issues. Should the president be able to authorize military force against Al-Qaeda without congressional approval? Kind of leaning towards this one, but also kind of this one. So I'm going to go with this one and put less. Should the government assassinate, or actually we're going to go with least because it's still kind of, Should the U.S. assassinate suspected terrorists in foreign countries? Leaning towards this one. Because I feel like this is more efficient than this. I don't know. I'm going to go with that and put least. Should the government increase spending on public transportation? No, and we should reduce current spending. No, we have. Okay, no, I'm satisfied. No, we should privatize. There we go. Perfect. Should the Electoral College be abolished? No. Yes, it should be updated. Well, it should be updated every census. Yeah, there we go. That's a good one right there. I like this option. No, Electoral College ensures representation of the whole country instead of just major cities. That is the reason for it. That's very important. Should foreigners currently residing in the United States have the right to vote? No, because then there's no purpose of citizenship. That is the purpose of citizenship. The right to vote. At least that's the way I see it. Should photo ID be required to vote? Yes. To prevent voter fraud. Where are we? Should the U.S. have a mail-in ballot process for a whole state and local, state, and federal elections? No. Because then you're sending everybody a ballot. It should be absentee ballot where you can request a ballot. If you're just sending everybody a ballot, then that creates issues of people sometimes double voting or sending ballots to people who don't want to vote, and then they can sell their ballot. So it creates a bunch of issues like that. Should political candidates be required to release the recent tax returns to the public? I don't really care. Right there. Their income is none of my business. I really don't care. Should there be a limit to the amount of money a candidate can receive from a donor? Right there. I think it's a violation of free speech. Should the minimum voting age be lowered? No. Should be rated. No, voters should be required to pass a basic test. So I think it should be when you're an adult. And I think we need to decide, are you an adult at 18 or are you an adult at 21? You should be able to vote, drink, buy and own a firearm, join the military, all these things at one age. That age needs to be 18 or it needs to be 21. Don't split it up. I think that's how it should be done. So I'm just going to click no for now, but I just explained it. If you want to raise the age to vote to 21 and raise the age of the military to 21 and make it so you can drink at 21 and own a firearm at 21, fine. Do you want to drop it down to 18 and have all those things at 18? Also fine. Just pick one. Because right now it's like that age between 18 and 21. It's like, are you an adult or are you not? I think we need to pick one and stick with it. Should a politician who has been formally convicted of a crime be allowed to run for office? As long as they finish serving their sentence. Okay, I think that should be fine there. As long as they finish serving their sentence, it's up to the people to decide if they want to vote for them or not. Should corporations, unions, and nonprofit organizations be allowed to donate to political parties? Sure, why not? As long as the people agree in those types of things. Like if an NPO decides, hey, that their board decides we want to, send money, or the union votes to do so, or corporation board votes to do so, sure, they should be able to donate money how they want. Should foreign lobbyists be allowed to raise money for American elections? Now, foreign interest should not be. So from domestic, that, like with up here, from domestic, I think that's fine. From foreign, I think that becomes an issue. Should there be a 5-year ban on White House congressional officials from becoming lobbyists after they leave the government? I don't know. Apparently there's a 2-year ban currently. 5 years, because that would be a full past a full term, so that's probably fine. But I'm also going to put leaves because I don't know much about it. Build a wall along the southern border. I think, yes, it's starting to make a lot of sense. So, yes. I think 4 or so years ago, I would have been the high-tech surveillance barrier, but now seeing the benefits of a physical one, where it's needed, yes. That is one thing where my view has changed slightly in the past 4 or 5 years. Should legal immigrants have access to government-subsidized healthcare? No. Well, look, perfect option right there. Yeah, they should be allowed to purchase private healthcare if they want. Both of these are very good options. We'll go with this one, though. Should illegal immigrants be offered in-state tuition rates at public colleges within their residing state? Well, if they're there illegally, no, because they're not citizens of that state. Should local law enforcement be allowed to detain illegal immigrants for minor crimes and transfer them to federal immigration authorities? That's probably the best option right there, because if they're committing a crime, you gotta serve your time. Should children of illegal immigrants be granted legal citizenship? Yes, if they were born here. That seems pretty fair, only if they were born here. Should sanctuary cities be receiving federal funding? No. And we should ban the use of them. Perfect. Should Muslim immigrants be banned from entering the country until the government improves its From high-risk countries. I think that's the best option right there. Should working illegal immigrants be given temporary amnesty? I'm just going to go with the simple answer of no. Should immigrants be required to learn English? Yes. That's the option I would go for. Make it part of the citizenship test. If you're going to be, well, immigrants, no, not required. So the best option is on the citizenship test, make sure that they know English. The citizenship test must be taken in English, and it must have an English section where you have to know English. That'd be what I would decide. Should the U.S. increase or decrease the amount of temporary work visas? There's a lot of questions. Probably this one. Should immigrants to the United States be allowed to hold dual citizenship status? Oh boy. I think yes. That's fine to hold dual citizenship status. I don't really think any extra on it is needed. Should immigrants be deported if they commit a serious crime? It's a pretty interesting option. It's an interesting idea. Well, if you're a citizen, so I think this one right here, only if they enter the country illegally. Should the U.S. increase restrictions on its current border security policy? Kind of, yes. We'll go with that. Should immigrants be required to pass the citizenship test to demonstrate a basic understanding of our country's language, history, and government? Absolutely. There we go. I also think that if we're going to have public schooling, this should be a part of graduation requirements. Should there be a temporary ban on all immigration in the United States? Probably this one. Do you support education? Should you support increasing taxes for the rich in order to reduce interest rates on student loans? Right there. Should be transitioned to privately managed accounts. Should the federal government pay for tuition at four-year colleges and universities? No. Simple no. Should the federal government fund universal preschool? No. There we go. And all education to be privatized. Do you support charter schools? Yes, but not at the expense of funding public schools because, well, let's see. Oh, there we go. Yes, an entire education system should be privatized. Do you support Common Core national standards? That one looks like a good option. That one's also a good option. That's also a very good option. Okay, yeah, I think that's the best option. Should the government decriminalize school truancy? I'm not sure what that is. Truancy is intentional, unjustified, unauthorized, or illegal absence from compulsory education. Its absence is caused by students of their own free will and does not apply to excused absences. Okay. Yes, if you don't want to go to school, that's up to you. All right, social issues. Should the government continue to fund Planned Parenthood? Oh, there we go. No, the government should not give funds to any organization. That seems fair. What's your stance? Let's look at other stances. Pro-life. I also, of course, I'm going to go strictly pro-life. I think my option is 100% pro-life unless the mother's life is in danger, because that goes down to my moral idea of the only acceptable use of violence is in defense of life, liberty, and property. And if the mother's life is in danger, then like if there's a life-saving operation that like can save the mother's life, but it will terminate the child, then I think yes, that it's fine to do that operation. because it's saving the mother's life. But in any other circumstance, I would conceive it as murder to terminate the child. Should health insurance providers be required to offer free birth control? No. Good option there. Government should not decide what private businesses can provide. Should gender identity be added to anti-discrimination laws? I think let private companies do what they want. Again, as long as we're not allowing oligopolies or monopolies to exist. When monopolies and oligopolies exist, then this becomes an issue because then there's no competition. But if there's no monopolies and no oligopolies, if you don't like what a private company is doing, then I can always go to a different private company. Should a business be able to deny services to a customer if the request conflicts with the owner's religious beliefs? I'd say yes. Should be able to deny service for any reason, again, as long as we do not have monopolies and oligopolies. This is also fair. I like this option too. Yeah, that's a good option. Yes, but I gotta be straightforward. Here's our rules at this place, so you can go shop somewhere else if you want. Should transgender athletes be allowed to compete in athletic events? I don't think this is up to the government to decide. It should be up to the... Sorry about all the loud typing again. Private companies running the events. Doesn't matter what I think or what the government thinks. It's whatever the athletic event company is. For example, let's say it's the NFL. They decide what they want to do. I can voice my opinion. People can voice their opinions. Even government officials can voice their opinions. But they shouldn't be choosing what should be done. Forcing what should be done. Should universities provide trigger warnings and safe spaces for students? No. I'd go with that. Should the federal government institute a mandatory buyback of assault weapons? No. This is a violation of the Second Amendment. Should gay couples have the same adoption rights as straight couples? I think it's up to the adoption companies, but this is my personal view on it, not how the government should act view, but that's my personal view on it. So we'll go with that, and I'll click less just because the conflict of personal view and what the government should be doing. I don't think the government should be interfering at all with the adoption companies. Let them do what they need to do, but this is my personal view on it, on what I think the outcome should be, but not how the government should rule over it. All right, continuing on. Do you support the legalization of same-sex marriage? Take the government out of marriage, instead make it a religious decision. Perfect. That's the exact option I was looking for. Should states be allowed to display the Confederate flag on government property? Let's see. I think each state should have the right to display any flag it chooses, and it should be up to the state to decide. Should businesses be required to have women on their board of directors? Not required. I think this might be a good idea. Board members should be the most qualified regardless of gender. That's the best. And look, there you go. Perfect. Even better. The government should never require the diversity of a private business. The private business should decide, and they can decide if their board of directors votes, hey, we want to add a woman to our board, regardless of her qualifications, fine. If they say, hey, we're going to hire the best qualified person, and this person happens to be a woman or happens to be a man, also fine. The government should never require it. Moving on. Do you support the death penalty? Other stances? I think that's a good option right there. Yeah, that's probably the best option. Should the federal government require racial sensitivity training to employees? No. Just ensure that there are clear guidelines, action, accountability for acts of discrimination. Perfect. There you go. Should the government support a separation of church and state by removing references to God on money, federal buildings, and national monuments? I would say no. Both of these options, but I think the best option is this one because none of them do reference a specific religion. It's usually just towards God. And my religious beliefs are my private relationship between God and myself. I don't want the government forcing anything on me, or really recognizing it either. It's my own thing. But it doesn't really reference any specific religion, just God the Creator. And then as Christ comes into it, that's with me. So, should women be allowed to wear I don't know how to pronounce that, so forgive me, a niqab, maybe that's correct, or face veil to civic ceremonies? Covers the face. So, see, I don't like the idea of you not being able to know who they are, but also the whole idea, like, I wouldn't want someone telling me I can't, carry my Bible or wear a cross around my neck. But so I think this is a good option right here. Their identity must be verified. I don't care if it's, how it's verified, but it must be verified. So, should terminally ill patients be allowed to end their lives via assisted suicide? Not a fan. Well, that seems like a good option, but they should be allowed to refuse artificial life support. Should hate speech be protected by the First Amendment? Absolutely, it is. As long as it doesn't threaten violence. We talked about this last week. Ooh, even better option. I don't trust the government to define boundaries of what hate speech is. Should marital rape be classified and punished as severely as non-marital rape? I would say so because it's still the same crime. Should the military allow women to serve in combat roles? Yes, as long as they can pass the same physical tests as men. I would say, on average, there's the whole thing of, on average, men are more logical and men are more physically strong, just like on average, women are more emotional and on average, women are more flexible. But there are always exceptions to those. So, for those exceptions, yes, as long as they can pass the same physical test as the men can. All right, local issues. In the 2020 Florida District 6 U.S. House Representative election were held today. Which candidate would you vote for? Oh, this is... So, I'm not going to answer any of these because I don't want it to reflect my outcome. But I would say either Michael Waltz or Samuel Adams. I'm not going to click it though. And right now, Donald Trump. But again, not going to click it because I don't want it to affect my outcome. Which quality is most important to you in a candidate? Okay, so this I will click. Let's see. Transparency, consistency, determination, effectiveness, intelligence, vision, diplomacy, commitment. Probably those. Common sense is good too. Out of any... leadership, yeah. Morality, electability, integrity, honesty. No politicians are honest. Integrity and morality, I'm more focused on what your policy is than those things. Don't really care what those are as long as, like, your personality, I don't care about as long as policy. Electability, I'm going to vote for the person who I think is the best. Show my results. Let's see what we get here. An hour and 15 minutes in. All right. About halfway through. 3/4 of the way through. And here we go. No thanks. Interesting. That's close to what I expected. I honestly expected, it's interesting. I wonder where they're getting their data from, because I am closer to libertarian than typical establishment Republican, but Jo Jorgensen, there's a lot of stuff I disagree with, where she, to me, seems very much less libertarian than the actual what libertarianism means. But interesting. So we can go through and we can actually look at the answers and how other people feel about it, and who you agree with, who you disagree with. So decentralization versus centralization shows where I am compared to other people. Religious versus secular, same thing, where the star is you. Laissez-faire versus Keynesian, sorry. Individualism versus collectivism. Again, you can see where I am. Militarism versus pacifism. Again, you can see where I am. Let's look at more of these. Where do we leave off? Oh wow, we opened up a bunch of these. Okay. Militarism. Okay, we just did that. Capitalism versus democratic socialism. Small government versus big government. You can see I'm actually the smallest out of all of them. Libertarian. Oh, that's just probably why I put me closest to her, even though she's not really that libertarian. Unilateralism versus multilateralism. Right wing versus left wing. Isolationism versus imperialism. I'm actually put at moderate isolationism. Interesting. Privacy versus security. Protectionism versus globalization. Assimilation versus multiculturalism. Nationalism versus globalism. Traditional versus progressive. Tough versus tender. Politically incorrect versus politically... That's funny, I'm more politically incorrect than President Trump. Interesting. And this is why, see, one of the reasons I don't think Jo Jorgensen is a true libertarian. She's more on the politically correct side than the politically incorrect. Deregulation versus regulation, good. What is this? Okay. Anthropocentrism versus environmentalism, okay? Democracy versus meritocracy. Topics. Education, who I agree with versus disagree with. Healthcare, who I agree with versus disagree with. Social issues. Domestic policy. Transportation. Interesting. That's probably what threw me the closest to her, with the idea of getting rid of public transportation. Elections. Immigration. The economy. Foreign policy. The environment. Science. Crime. National security. Pretty much neutral to everybody. Okay, interesting. And then it just gives you some more information on all of this stuff. And so this is pretty interesting, the way that they show their political compass here. It's actually flipped upside down than the typical political compass. Usually authoritarian is on top, libertarian is on bottom. So that would mean that I'm actually on the typical political compass right here, because you would have to see it upside down. But on this one, obviously right there. So interesting. Okay. Well, it's already been an hour, 20 minutes, but I would still like to do the Specker test. Specker, we can go through kind of quicker. I'm kind of going to read the question and then just click, and hopefully we'll get through this pretty quickly. And let's go ahead. Start. I like the Specker test quite a bit. Start. Did I not click? Okay. What's our question? I can't read this. Oh, there we go. Each individual enjoys bodily autonomy and have rights that no other individual or group may violate. Agree. A fully formed individual have the freedom to decide what they knowingly and voluntarily consume. Agree. Slavery can be acceptable practice in certain circumstances, such as punishment for a crime. Depends on what you define as what slavery is. Is slavery, for example, in this instance, like you committed a crime, now you have to do community service? If so, I'd say yes, but If you mean like actual slavery, like you're owned by somebody else, then no. So I'm going to say as neutral just because of the lack of clarification. Freedom of expression should be unhindered by law regardless of the content or context. Absolutely. Some form of expressions are offensive, such as hate speech, and therefore should be banned. Absolutely not. Political authorities need to control communications to prevent. No. Provision of the internet should be monopolized by political authorities and made available free of charge. No. People should be free to engage or abstain from religious activities that do not violate the rights of the others. Absolutely. Blasphemy laws should be brought back or strengthened in order to protect religion from its enemies. No. The law should neither favor nor aggress against, I don't know why it took me a minute to get through that, any particular religion, culture, or creed. Agree. The interest of equality, religious organizations should be exempt from paying their fair share. In the interest of equality, religious organizations should not be exempt from paying their fair share. That's a tough one because is it against their religion to, pay for it or not? So I'm going to leave that as neutral. It is valid to say that if you have nothing to fear, then you shouldn't have nothing to hide. Disagree. Transparency is vital to ensuring the accountability of institutions, political or otherwise. Agree. The surveillance powers of political authorities should be expanded to combat terrorism and other threats. Disagree. People should be secure in their persons, homes, properties, and communications. Should be secure? Yes. Secure, not secure. To solve crimes, the police need the power to conduct their affairs without consent or a warrant. Disagree. Sexual orientation, preference, or gender should have no impact on the treatment of individuals by the law. Agree. Political authorities should have the power to define, license, or restrict personal relationships. No, I don't. We talked about this in the previous test. The government should not be involved in marriage. It should be a religious thing. Being married is between the man, the husband, the wife, and God. That's what I see marriage as. And if you're not religious and don't want to get married, fine. If you're religious and want to get married, absolutely fine. The government should have nothing to do with it. Consenting adults should be free to choose their own sexual practices and personal relationships. Again, not up to the government. Access to abortion should be regulated by law in order to reduce or eliminate the practice. I agree. Because at that point, I see that as... It's interesting. I see that as an anti-libertarian argument, or I see it as a libertarian argument because you're protecting the life. You're giving the life and the liberty of the child. The scope of criminal laws should be limited to the violation of the rights of others through force or fraud. Yeah, partially agree. It is valid to say that when there is no victim, then no crime has been committed. Partially disagree. Banned medicinal and recreational drugs are a danger to society and should be made or remain illegal. Disagree, and I talked about this in the previous test, the idea of making it illegal, decriminalizing the drugs and criminalizing the actions around the drugs, such as using them around children or in public places. Police, fire, and ambulance services can be provided exclusively and effectively by the market. Agree. People who assume the risk of harm to themselves are a burden on society and should be punished by the law. Disagree. Slightly. Restitution should be paid to victims or their families at the expense of the criminal and negligent wrongdoer. Agree. Rights such as due process and the presumption of innocence only interfere with obtaining criminal convictions. Disagree. Juries should be able to judge not just the facts of the case, but also the justice of the law. Slightly disagree. Free market dispute resolution is ineffective and thus requires a system of justice funded through political means. Free market dispute resolution. So this is saying, should courts be provided by the government? I say yes, courts should be, kind of yes. They should be provided by the government. Prisons, as they currently exist, are a violation of individual rights and therefore should be abolished. Slightly disagree. The only legitimate use of force is in defense of individual rights against physical aggression. Completely agree. This is what I talked about before. The only acceptable use of violence is in defense of life, liberty, or property. All people have the right to self-defense, and they may agree to be aided by another individual or group. Absolutely. Individuals do not have the right to own firearms and should be made difficult or impossible to acquire one. Completely disagree. People who use violence to defend themselves from physical aggression should be prosecuted. Use violence to completely disagree. Property owners should be free to set the rules regarding the presence of weapons on their own property. Property owners. Yes. I like the Florida option where, you can put up a no firearms allowed sign, but that's not held true under law. But if they ask you to leave and you don't, you can be charged with trespassing. I think that's the best way to go about it. The law should restrict, register, and monitor the ownership, manufacture, and transfer of firearms and ammunition. Completely disagree. Ensuring that individuals have respect for property rights is fundamental to maintaining a free and prosperous society. Ensuring that individuals have respect for property rights. Agree. All forms of property contracts should be regulated. No. People have the right to control and enjoy their property so long as their choices do not infringe on the rights of others. Absolutely. The practices of eminent domain and civil asset forfeiture are abuses of political power. Yes, and need to be eliminated. In order to protect the poor from the rich, limits on profit, no limits on any of that. No. For voluntary dealings, parties should be free to trade with whoever they want and on mutually agreeable terms. Yes. Landowners have no incentive to maintain natural resources and as such need to be regulated. No. To prevent the tragedy of the commons, such as pollution and misuse of resources, all land should be privatized. Yes. Environmental protection requires that natural resources be held in common and private ownership restricted. No. Profits hinder the behavioral changes required to protect the environment, necessitating political intervention. No. Environmental advocacy and social pressure are a more effective means of changing behavior than political action. Yes. Politically funded subsidies for energy production should be abolished, leaving the market free to decide. Yes. Energy pricing, allocation, and production are too important to be left to the market. No. People who think they are entitled to keep what they want, what they earn, are being selfish and just pay their fair share. No. It is valid to say that contributing our fair share is the price we pay. No. The budgets of political authorities should be balanced by curbing expenditure, not by raising revenues. Yes. People are free to purchase any product or service they wish and should not be forced to pay for anything. They're free to purchase what they want and should not be forced to pay for something that they don't want. Yes, I agree. Free market banking with competition among institutions of all types is preferable to a central banking model. Yes. Profits and losses are a burden for society to bear, not the individuals profits and losses are a burden for society to bear, not the individuals making the decisions. What does that mean? Profits and losses are a burden for society to bear, not individuals making the decisions. I'm not entirely sure I understand that question, so we're just going to leave it as neutral. Individuals who engage in voluntary exchange should be free to use as money any mutual agreeable object. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So if we want to agree that I'm going to pay you in beans versus actual legal tender, and we both agree to it, yes. Inflationary monetary policies and legal tender laws damage the economy and should be abolished. Disagree and agree, so I'm going to kind of leave it as neutral. It is valid to say that throughout history, money has been the root of most, if not all, of the evils in the world. No. I would say not really. It's more of just sin in the world. People have the right to form corporations, cooperatives, and other entities based on voluntary association. Yes. Private ownership of the means of production is theft and should be owned by the workers instead. No. Politically funded subsidies and bailouts to businesses, labor, and other special interests should be abolished. No. Oh wait, no. Funded subsidies and bailouts should be the bailouts being abolished. Okay. Then yes, agree slightly. Politically funded subsidies and bailouts to business. Okay, I misread. As business, labor, and other special interests should be abolished. No, it's the public subsidies and bailouts to those things should be abolished. And I agree with that. Not that these things themselves should be abolished. Politically created entities should be able to compete with private enterprise. I don't like that idea. No. Employment agreements should not be encumbered by the social engineering of a political authority. Yes, you should be able to the employer and the employee agree on their own, contract without the government interfering. Employers and employees should be required by law to bargain with each other through a labor union. Absolutely not. They can just do it by themselves or with labor union, whatever they want. Membership in a labor union should be required for obtaining. No. Compulsory attribution and bargaining are necessary to ensure that bosses do not exploit their workers. I kind of agree a little bit. Provision of education should be monopolized by political authorities and made available free of charge. No. Free market education achieves greater quality, accountability, and efficiency with more diversity and choice. Absolutely. The education of children is the sole financial responsibility of parents or guardians, not some political authority. Absolutely agree. Health insurance companies exploit the sick and dying to make a profit and therefore should be regulated by law. No. All individuals should be free to determine the level of health insurance they want, if any. Yes. Healthcare is too important to be controlled by political action and should therefore be provided by the market. Yes. Society has a vested interest in preventing loss of life, therefore suicide and euthanasia should be illegal. I'm gonna disagree. It's like, what do you do with it? They killed themselves. Oh, now I'm gonna give them the death penalty or throw them in jail. It's up to them. Provision of healthcare should be monopolized by political authorities and made available free of charge. Absolutely not. Not all individuals will take responsibility for planning their retirement, therefore an age. Nope. Let them do it by themselves. If they're irresponsible, that's their own problem. Politically funded welfare should be replaced with voluntarily funded insurance, charity, and mutual aid. Absolutely. That's a perfect option. Yes, I agree 100%. Most people will not voluntarily help the poor, therefore, no, disagree. I think when you decrease taxes, people are more willing to provide charity. And that is seen in, this was a couple years ago, I saw this chart. Maybe I could find it for another video coming up. But the idea that states with lower tax rates had higher contributions to charity. So, and also I see that in myself too. When I started making more money, I was able to give more money to charity. So, charity and civil society will weaken if political authorities do not have the power to direct such activity. Disagree. To ensure global stability, political authorities need to form alliances and act as the world police. Slightly disagree. To ensure the security of a nation, services in the military should be compulsory for all citizens. Disagree. Should be voluntary. There is no such thing as inalienable rights, and they can be suspended during times of war. Rights. Absolutely disagree. Seeing that right now with the COVID stuff. Intelligence agencies would not be effective if they were subjected to oversight and transparency. Disagree. Laws that create political secrets which prevent society from knowing the truth should be abolished. Partially agree, because sometimes stuff needs to be top secret for a moment until it's safe for it to be out. Otherwise, our enemies might hear about it. So, but I understand the argument, so that's why I put partially agree. Foreign policy should seek to help a nation in a position of strength relative to that of other nations. To help a nation, Foreign policy should seek to keep a nation in a position of strength relative to other nations. Partially agree. Foreign policy should favor defense against attack from abroad and avoid diplomatic entanglements. Agree that yes. Foreign interventions, including military and economic aid, are necessary for preserving the security of a nation. Disagree. All people have the right to resist tyranny and defend themselves, their rights, and the rights of others. Absolutely. To increase wealth and reduce poverty, all impediments to free trade should be abolished. Yes. Political freedom and escape from tyranny require that individuals not be prevented from crossing political borders. But I think each nation has its own sovereignty. So yes, you should be able to leave your country, but that doesn't mean you should be able to enter any other country. So I agree and disagree, forcing me to leave it neutral. Like, I don't like the idea like North Korea, it's illegal to leave. But I also don't like the idea of like, oh yeah, sure, anybody can enter our country, no matter what. So yes, you should be able to leave, but it doesn't mean you have the right to just enter a country. Trade is too important to be unregulated and should be restricted by some kind of political authority. Disagree. Economic freedom demands the unrestricted movement of human as well as financial capital across political borders. Unrestricted movement of human as well as financial capital. Again, same thing I just said before. where you should be able to leave if you want, but doesn't mean you should be able to enter, so I'm leaving it as neutral. All people, without exception, are born with an inherent right to their life, liberty, and property. Absolutely. There are some rights can impose an obligation upon other individuals to fulfill that right. There are some rights can, I feel like that's a typo. There are some rights that can impose an obligation upon other individuals to fulfill that right. Disagree slightly. Law should neither deny nor abridge human rights based upon biological characteristics or personal preferences. Agree. Private organizations can set standards of association, and individuals can respond with ostracism or boycotts. Absolutely agree. Parents and other guardians have the right to raise their children according to their own standards and beliefs. Absolutely agree. Parents should be able to abuse and neglect the children without fear of intervention from anybody. Slightly disagree. Well, it depends. What do you mean by abuse and neglect? Because some people would consider simple discipline as abuse. I would say that they understand that simple discipline is not abuse, and I'm going to go ahead and fully agree then. Without the state to protect society from the violence of human nature, there would be chaos and disorder. Disagree. I think people can be fine on their own, as long as they, are reasonable making decisions. Is the right of every individual to resist tyranny? It is the right, yes. Replacing a system with one that respects individual rights, yes. Look at how the United States was formed. The state is an inherently immoral institution and should be torn down as soon as possible. Slightly agree. I think the state is a necessary evil. And that leaves me at economic 82, cultural 72. It specs me as a libertarian capitalist. Interesting. In the past, I've gotten things such as minarchist, libertarian minarchist, libertarian conservative, libertarian capitalist, but that tells you I'm pretty much always in the same area. I'm always somewhere around here. Kind of. Sometimes a little more up and to the right, sometimes around here. So somewhere along this area right here. And I think minarchist was a little more right here. I think the libertarian conservative was like here, minarchist was like here. So that tells you the general area of where I am. But we are over an hour and a half into this video, so I think it is a good time to finish out. And with that, let's go ahead and close things out. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to take these tests, go to specker.org, and it'll pull up this site. We go to spekr.org. It'll pull this site up. Or if you go to is it org or com? Let's see. isidewith.org. Yep. And then you can take the quiz. So those are the 2 quizzes that we did. And with that, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We post videos every Monday, a Dokkan video, every Wednesday, a pop culture/video game video, and every Friday, or sometimes Saturday like today, a Ramble/Rant video. So I hope you all enjoyed it, and I will see y'all next time.